Welcome to Amazon Legends, where we have real stories about making it big on Amazon. Our guests are CEOs of large companies and entrepreneurs who became power sellers, also providers specializing in helping sellers, aggregators that acquire sellers, and former Amazonians will give us an insight from behind the scenes. Here is your host, Nick Uresin.
Welcome to another episode of Amazon Legends. My next guest today used to be a physical therapist. He spent 10 years in physical therapy, and in the end, he decided, nah, this is not for me. And he went into, of all things, software development. So for those physical therapists listening to the show, by any chance, in your future, maybe you'll become software developer. So today, he's the founder and CEO of PPC Entourage, which is a PPC management software company. And when he's not working, he likes to play chess and do a little bit of salsa dancing, travel, and he's big into personal growth and many other things. With that, everybody, meet my guest, Mike Zagare. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Oh, so excited to be here. And if you ever play me on chess, my rating is 450, but hopefully it'll be better the next time when we play each other.
And where do you play, by the way? Which platform do you play?
I'm on chess.com. I just started this year. Chess and salsa are two new things I'm learning. And I'm telling you, it's like I'm still at that beginner stage where I'm like the worst in the room, but I like that feeling. I like to get in and, just learn. And every single day I'm doing puzzles and it's so much fun. No wonder why it's been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah, well, I mean, chess, I play, believe it or not, I play chess to relax.
Ah, okay. Well, we have to play sometime. Although it doesn't relax me like it does you. I'm pretty intense when I play, or try to be intense.
Oh, I'm intense, and also when I'm playing, it's for me, it's warfare. It's not only the moves, but also the psychological warfare. Like I'm making fun of the other guy.
Awesome. Now I know your style.
Yeah. So now you built a PPC management software, and if I'm right, also your company was acquired, right?
Yeah, we were recently acquired by Carbon 6 about a year ago. It's been a little over a year now.
Yeah. So Carbon 6 is a company that acquires different platforms that will offer the different suite of services for Amazon sellers. So if they thought your system was good, then obviously there's something there. So what we want to do is the software in the end is man-made. You sit down and think about what is the right process, and then you automate it, and then that way you can rely on the software to do the things that otherwise you would do yourself. But it's all based on certain principles, certain methodology. So is there a methodology in managing PPC?
Absolutely, there is.
And tell us what that methodology is.
So the methodology is to know where to spend, know what to do, and when to do it.
Okay, so it's about, first of all, you're planning your budget of how much to spend, but just assigning that amount is not enough because you have all kinds of different things. So what we're going to discuss, and we're going to frankly simulate what your software does in terms of methodology, so that listeners can understand what is the best way to spend their money on driving their paid advertising. So tell us what you mean, Buzz, by knowing where to spend.
Yeah, so most Amazon sellers we know are spending lots of money on advertising. It's a pay-to-play model. In order to get to the top of Amazon, you have to pay to be there for the most part, unless you choose not to do that for whatever reason. But for the most part, there's a lot of emphasis on paid advertising, and in making sure your budget is utilized the right way is really important. So what we see a lot of accounts that are either spending money across only one ad type, or maybe only one match type, or maybe they are heavily skewed towards one different product, and there could be diversifying a little bit, or maybe they're not taking fully advantage of driving traffic to that one product. Maybe their wasted ad spend ratio is really high. So what I mean by making sure you get the most out of your budget, it's really important to know how to allocate that budget properly based on your strategy. And there's so much that goes into it, not to overwhelm people, but this is probably a good chunk of money that you're spending every single month. So making sure that money is put to good use is of critical importance.
So I want to launch, let's apply an example that, let's say I want to launch a listing. Let's take a competitive category, so to speak, that is a little bit heavily invested in, is masks. Let's say I want to sell masks. So since COVID, of course, everybody wants to sell, even though it's kind of dying, but obviously it's a crowded space. So tell us, how do you know how much to spend on what ad type?
Yeah, so this is going to be something where you have to find out where there's opportunity to rank, and you have to figure out a budget based on how much it's going to cost on average per click, and then start to get some sales velocity. So you can dig into some reports to find out how many units you have to actually drive to keywords that contain your root keywords. I'd suggest finding 5 to 10 really good, strong root keywords or keywords that have your root keywords in them. In this example, it would be face masks. So maybe there's some longer tail keywords. You can figure out how many, what's the average cost per click, what kind of sales velocity you need to get to, sell to get to that point where you're near on the first page. So you can start to build momentum and get reviews and then go from there. And somewhere in that is a calculation of your budget for the launch phase, full well knowing that during the launch phase, you're likely not going to have some amazing results. You may be running at 100% ACOS, 200% ACOS for a given period of time, so that you start to get visibility on Amazon's page for major keywords, so that you start to get reviews and you start to get the flywheel moving in, you're in the right direction. So in terms of budget, it's hard to say exactly what the budget would be, but it would take careful planning in terms of figuring out what are the main drivers for that product and what's the main sales velocity needed to compete for that category.
So this obviously heavily depends on your research into determining what keywords you're going to shoot for in order to get your ranking. So I heard you say something, a phrase, root keyword. What is the definition of root keyword?
Yeah, so for example, there's going to be opportunities that have the root keyword in them. So in this example, the root keyword would be face mask. If you were selling cat litter mat, perhaps the root keyword would be litter mat. There's a specific commonality amongst all of the longer tail search terms that would be that root keyword. And then to find those opportunities that might be a little bit less competitive, that you can still get ranking juice for, that have that root keyword in it, and target those keywords in the initial phase to start to build out some visibility of ranking on the first page of Amazon.
I see. So root keyword would be the short form of it, and then what we call the long tail would be all the derivatives of it, so to speak. So you by making it longer, and then that way you can have a little bit maybe less volume but more targeted and increase more conversion and things like that. So that's what you mean, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting is we have some analysis of performance based on length of the search term inside of our tool. So we see that the one word search terms, which sometimes are a little bit more broad, versus 2 words versus 3, 4, 5, even up to 6. The more words you have to describe a particular keyword, the more specific the request typically is, and the more likely that's a connection to what they're actually looking for, the more relevant it could potentially be. So we actually see better performance for some of those longer tail search terms because it's more descriptive of what somebody's actually shopping for. So if you could find some of those that still have some of your root keywords in it in a really competitive niche where maybe you can't afford to be as aggressive with that actual root keyword, you could start with some of those longer tail keywords that are more descriptive, but still have your root keyword in them.
I see. Okay, so so really this introduces a whole new concept in the sense that we like long tail keywords because you get better conversion out of them. But what you are suggesting is aim for long tail keywords that have those root keywords in them, because then you have a lot more focus on your campaign.
Yeah, and you could still target your root keyword itself, but it also depends on, your budget strategy. And not everyone has an endless supply of money. So if you're looking to figure it out, you may want to go after the longer tail search terms first that have the root keyword, and then start to get more reviews. And then over time, you might be more competitive, maybe a higher conversion rate. You could target the root keyword a little bit better.
Yeah. Okay. So now that we know we've got our root keyword and we know how much we have to spend on this launch, how do you know where the money goes?
Well, we're doing a launch. So typically the most important part of the launch is setting up a good foundation. And this is for any product, any Amazon account that we see. How strong is the foundation? Typically the best foundation is sponsored product ads. So you always want to start with the lowest part of the funnel. And obviously people who are going on Amazon to shop are already lower in the funnel in terms of their shopper experience, their buyer's journey. But sponsored product is the most native looking ad, meaning it looks similar to just shopping organically, and it's placed pretty much where those organic results are. So making sure that you have those root keywords identified and you are targeting those maybe with exact or phrase match, starting to get more towards the top of the search. You could even go for rest of search, but using sponsored product ads first and building out that base, I think, is the most important. And also building an automatic campaign on top of that as well, having a foundation of an auto campaign. I would start my budget there. I wouldn't necessarily use sponsored brand or sponsored brand video for targeting, for ranking rather. That would be more layered on afterwards. Once I have my budget allocated towards a strong foundation, it's working out well, I'm starting to get velocity, starting to get reviews, then I would start to branch out into the other ad types.
Okay. So sponsored products, these are the ones that are most common. And frankly, Amazon has different types of it. So when somebody does a search, right at the top, you have a big banner, which is for the sponsored brand types, and it's a lot more exposure. But really, immediately underneath, you start to see these listings, and it says sponsored. So, and then they start to put the organic search results in between. Yeah. So there is also another one, Mike, right? So it's on the product detail page. You also see a strip of different products. They are also sponsored products, right?
Yeah, those are called product page, sponsored product ads. So they're on the product pages.
Yeah. So in terms of budget, what is your take on putting some of your sponsored products on the product page versus the search results?
Yeah, so in the original example that you gave, the goal is to get visibility on Amazon for ranking if a product is brand new. So I wouldn't really want to waste any budget on product pages or rest of search. I want to identify those high opportunity keywords that have the root keyword inside of them, and then bid on those keywords somewhat aggressively to get sales velocity towards the top of the search. Because if you look at the conversion rate of top of search versus rest of search versus product pages, it's nearly double, if not double, compared to product pages and rest of search. So the goal is to get the sales velocity. Yes, you're going to pay a little bit more. That's somewhat offset by a higher conversion rate. And then you have the specific goal for ranking. And that's a period of time. Once you start getting the velocity, that goal then starts to change. The budget starts to get reallocated towards more product pages, more rest of search, more sponsored brand ads, more sponsored display ads.
Okay. So I mean, really, you are talking about strategy here, because it's deciding where to go and when to go. So because that's how we started. We said, okay, knowing, what to do and when to do it is important. So what I'm hearing is during the launch phase, put 100% of your budget into sponsored products. And then going forward, once you get some ranking and then you've got steady flow of orders, then you can start to introduce sponsored brands and others.
Yeah, a simple way of thinking about it, and this is generally speaking, there's no like absolute rules, but generally speaking, top of search, you want to try to target top of search with a modifier, exact match, and really relevant keywords, generally speaking. You could also use phrase match as well, because that's going to have the root of the keyword in it as well. But that's the initial strategy. And then you kind of move on to the second phase once you have more reviews.
Okay. So second phase begins when?
Oh, that could begin when you start to get some velocity. It really depends on the product, but once you start to get some reviews, some sales velocity, then you could, and then once you have some data to go by, because you're also going to get some data from your search term report, which you could then utilize to see, okay, what is actually converting for this product? Which search term works? When does it work? You'll have information from your automatic campaign as well at that point. So you can dig into your auto campaign and know that, hey, this brand new search term or this brand new ASIN showed up, and I have a decent ACoS, 30% or less, 40% or less. I can then target that as well and start to branch out and build out my funnel. I mean, ultimately, the initial stages is going to be at the expense of a higher budget, higher ACoS. You're going to try to get to rank. Then you're going to try to really start to get more sales and expand your funnel any which way, because we know that if we get lots of impressions, that plays on shoppers' minds. They see you one place, they see you another place. They're more likely to click on you either through an ad or organically. So we want to make sure we start to get those ads out there specifically for things that are working. And the search term report is really good to dig into. I would spend a week, every week, at least half an hour or an hour digging into your search term report just to get a feel for actually what's going on underneath the hood of your campaigns.
Okay. So phase two is really a function of, it's not timeline, so to speak. It's not like 30 days or, 60 days. It's more about the performance of the listing, where now the listing has X number of reviews and you got a daily order, flowing into the system. And that's when you say, okay, now we've got some sustainable, number of orders coming in on a daily basis, and we've got some reviews. And at that point, you can start to move on to phase two.
Yeah, you could also potentially cut back a little bit on the initial ranking of the keywords. When you think about that, might be very aggressive. You're looking to be very aggressive in that first phase. Second phase, maybe you're looking to find out what's working really well and focus more of your budget towards the things that are working well, because you can't really sustain being ultra aggressive on certain keywords. It ultimately depends on what your budget is. If you have an unlimited budget and you want to be super aggressive, that's likely going to help out your case. But sometimes that's just not sustainable. So you have to start to pull back from that initial ranking campaign more towards, maybe going towards rest of search type of, instead of top of search, or whatever your budget allows for. You have to get a little bit more strategic about it and then start to target what's working in the search term report.
So as far as taking actions, because you know how it is, you're looking at data and, you go crazy looking at it every day. And then you go even crazier if you keep making changes every day. It doesn't accomplish anything. So in your PPC management, what is the best practice, or when to look at the data and then when to make changes?
Well, you're 100% right. You can get pretty much go insane looking at it every single day, especially when the data is not fully in. That happens with Amazon. There's a bit of a delay. And especially when you're just starting out, that could really probably drive you nuts if you don't see sales right away and your ACoS is like 300 or whatever. So initially, all depends on how much money you're going to spend. It really depends on each individual brand. But initially, give it a week or two before you really make any substantial changes. You want to give it some time to really start to ramp up. Anything before that, if it's before a week, you might be making a mistake early on by cutting things short too quickly. It's really hard to tell unless I was in control of the account. But the general principle is give it a little bit of time initially early on. You can always cap your budgets for that campaign so you don't bleed out. You don't want to bleed out a budget. Like that wouldn't be a good idea either. But give it a little bit of room to breathe. And then in terms of weekly optimization, it depends on what we're talking about. Are we talking about a seasoned product that's been around for a while? Are we talking about this new product that's just getting started? If it's just getting started, I do want to look at it a little bit more often. And I want to look at the search term report and make very good bid adjustments and make sure I'm not bleeding out on my budget. If it's seasoned and been around for a while, it's probably going to be less often. And we may even have some automation doing it for us. So general rule of thumb, though, like don't be on top of it every single day, but more so in the beginning. And then as it matures, as it becomes more seasoned, you don't have to, be on top of it every single day.
That just gave me a thought. There's so many advertising agencies, right? So Amazon agencies, PPC agencies, so many companies offering this. So the standard service is, depending on their reputation, you pick one, and usually you get an account executive assigned. So what you are really saying is these account executives are not really putting an intense number of hours because they're not supposed to, because things don't change a lot, right? So they're doing the work front loaded first, and then setting it up, and then just sit back and watch how it goes.
Well, I don't want to say that because there's a lot that goes into it as well. It's one thing to have a bid management under control, but it's also another thing to have budget management under control, seasonality, communication with your inventory team to make sure that you have proper stock, making sure you have proper creatives, headlines, like all of the things. So in a perfect world, your bids are just optimized beautifully, and maybe a tools, optimizing your bid, or spreadsheets you do a couple times a month. But realistically, a good manager is going to have a lot on their plate as well to make sure the brand's heading in the right direction.
Well, you're talking about the manager of the operation, but if somebody is just doing the PPC management, then there really isn't much. I mean, they can obviously look at the content and to make sure that the content is aligned with the keyword strategy, but they don't get involved with inventory. They don't get involved with, they can make recommendations on the content. They can change maybe the text content, but their hands are really tied, technically, that they can't do much with it. Just run the PPC.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in my opinion, a good manager is in touch with the inventory, is in touch with the creative team, and is in touch with specifically the search term report to find new opportunities to then help them scale and fill out their funnel. So I do think, bid management isn't like a daily thing, because I think, at this point, tools can help manage the agencies that I know do use tools to help manage some of the bids. That's not what they're doing every day. They're really focused on building out the brand and helping the brand to scale. And also doing things like, finding ways to save money. I know in our tool, we have a budget utilization section where you can go in there and see, like, where am I wasting spend? And it's really clear cut. I am wasting spend here, here, and here. I'm sure good brand managers are doing that as well, and account managers.
Yeah. So let's talk about the overall budget management as far as new opportunities, finding new opportunities. So tell us, how do you find those new opportunities with your PPC campaign?
Yeah, so the real goal of this is to clear out the wasted spend. What we've noticed is if you look at the inverse of conversion rate, which typically is around 10%, let's say, for an average sponsored advertising account, that means that 90% of sales or 90% of clicks do not lead to a sale. So it's like the inverse conversion rate. We also call it the wasted ad spend ratio. So that's like the foundation of tracking that number, because obviously we want that number to go down. We want our clicks to lead to sales. So the reason why I bring that up is initially going into an account and removing or reducing that wasted ad spend so that your wasted ad spend ratio goes down is of critical importance, because that frees up budget to then find those opportunities. And those opportunities can be very unique to the brand. Sometimes they're hidden, sometimes they're obvious. Like, for example, I look at accounts all the time, and some brands are just not using sponsored brand video or sponsored brand ads for whatever reason. They have plenty of sponsored product ads, but none of the other ad types are available, are working they're not turned on for them. So, like, to me, that's an obvious opportunity where you can leverage sponsored product ads. You can go into the search term reports, find the ASINs, find the search terms, and bring that across into the other ad types. Other times it's not so obvious. Maybe their main root keyword is only being utilized in one ad type, But in order to find that out, you have to dig into the search term report, the keyword reports, to find out that their main root keyword is only in sponsored product ad and only in as a broad match. And they're missing out on having that root keyword as an exact or a phrase match. It's not a sponsored brand. It's not a sponsored brand video. I mean, the only way to really find that out is to dig into an account and say, okay, this is your main keyword. You're doing well, but you're missing out on the opportunity to show up here, here, and here. So let's fine tune that a little bit, or let's target this ASIN, or there's a million examples. But yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, it branches out very quickly, doesn't it? So all it takes is just pick up one of those keywords and then see where does this exist in all my campaigns, and go from there. Something I picked up on what you said earlier was wasted. Tell me again, what is it that you call it? Wasted ad spend?
Yeah, so we call it the wasted ad spend ratio.
Wasted ad spend ratio. Give us the definition of that again.
So this is all of this ad spend that it's spend that did not lead to a direct click, that has a click but did not lead to a sale. So the thing about the wasted ad spend ratio is even your good keywords or your good ASINs are going to have clicks without a sale. Unless you had 100% conversion, you're going to have a wasted ad spend ratio. I mean, a perfect world, we wouldn't have it at all, but we do. So the point is, we want to do things like improve our conversion rate, improve the relevant targets that we're going after, make sure that we're going after, really highly relevant keywords, unless there's a strategy behind it. We're going after category targeting or more broad-based keywords for a reason. Now, obviously, that's going to lead to clicks without a sale. But if you're looking to improve that number, then you obviously want to make sure you're going after relevant targets and your conversion rate is as good as possible.
Okay. There is something that also came up with one of my clients. So they were about to launch, and their product is normally it's a nice weather product. It's typically used for flooring your garage. You're making a new floor for your garage, and you put it's a coating. They sell a kit, and then it comes with a bunch of stuff. So as you can imagine, nobody wants to change the flooring for their garage when it's snowing outside. So it's not a winter product. So, but we wanted to launch it in the winter, mainly because we didn't want to jump into a very busy space, a busy time without really having any experience. So we launched it almost at the beginning of January. So he asked me a question at the time. Can we make sure that the ads only show up in the states in the South rather than the North? That's not possible on Amazon, is it?
Not unless you're using DSP. Yeah, that's the only way to do it. You would have to, you cannot do it inside at this point. I have a feeling they may start to roll stuff like that out in the future where you can do geolocation targeting. But for now, it's very, very much based on, search terms and keywords and audiences and things of that nature.
Yeah. So DSP is a much more comprehensive version of the advertising platform, right?
It's more comprehensive, and I wouldn't recommend it in the situation that you just said. When you're launching a product in January and you want to launch, that's probably not the best use case for it, because again, the goal for that product, if you're just launching it, is to get the keyword ranking. And even though people probably aren't really hot buyers in January for that product, there probably are a handful of people who are willing to pay for it or buy it at that time. And you want to, like you said, you want to get the juice rolling before the actual season. So I wouldn't use DSP in that situation, but I would use sponsored product ads.
Yeah. I have something important for all my listeners. Sellers lose money on lost or damaged inventory with Amazon, which can add up to a lot over a year. Did you know that there is a way to claim all your losses? Getida is the global leader in Amazon FBA auditing and reimbursements for Amazon FBA sellers worldwide. They deliver results with no upfront costs. They get paid only when you get paid. Visit www.getida.com/legends to learn more and sign up. And thanks to our friends at Getida, your first $400 in reimbursements will be free. That's www.getida.com/legends. And that's www.getida.com/legends. I mean, actually, it turned out very nicely and surprisingly, because we were all curious to see what was going to happen, because it's not a winter product. Here we are launching it. Plus, on top of that, they had their price point was pretty high, $700. So they had two variations of it based on how big the garage is. It's 300. They said they're going to go with 300 square foot and 600 square foot version. So you had two versions, but you could have different colors. So it came with, those things you could sprinkle and then, it looks very nice. So, but that came in different colors. So now they had 10 variations. So 10 variations and two price points based on size. So we had no idea, and we didn't know which colors they were. We knew which color was gonna perform the best, but we didn't know about the others, how the others were gonna perform. So he said, okay, let's throw everything up at the wall and let's see what sticks. Right at the beginning of winter almost. And the results were amazing because they immediately achieved a daily sell-through rate of 2 orders a day. So that's a pretty good one, steady. And within about 8 days, we achieved the page 1 ranking on their 2 root keywords. And so now it's ramping up, and now they're extremely pleased. So, but at that time, just we are about to launch, they said, oh, is there any way we can target the southern states? Because, people in the north, they're not gonna be interested. But nevertheless, it was all fine. And they got the ranking. Now they are on about, I don't know, over a dozen keywords. They are on the page 1. So it worked out nicely. So your strategy is just focus on those keywords and then get your ranking and then use sponsored products in the process.
Yeah, and I would even, if I was controlling this brand, I would look back, maybe 180 days or so to when the product first launched, because you probably had a lot of people that saw the listing in the winter time, and you can remarket to them as well with sponsored display. So that would be another strategy that you can, I talked before about setting up your foundation. Sponsored display remarketing is part of that foundation as well, because then you could take advantage of all the people that have gone to your listing, and you could put some budget towards those shoppers to try to get them back to purchase you again. It's called views remarketing. And in this example that you gave, I would put a little bit of a longer time frame because, hey, maybe people were looking in January, forgot about it. Now it's the summertime product. Bring them back in, and you could potentially sell more to them. Take advantage of all that traffic that didn't purchase.
Yeah. So sponsored display is different than sponsored product ads, right?
Yes. And the confusing part about all 3 ad types is that they can be used interchangeably with different parts of the funnel. So generally speaking, sponsored product ads is the lowest part of the funnel. But in theory, you could also use it as part of like top of funnel, because you can target different categories that are different from you. So you're getting more awareness out there. The same with sponsored display. You can use it as more lower funnel. In this example, we're talking about sponsored display views remarketing or purchases remarketing. That's really low in the funnel. That's someone who has seen your product before, they've landed in your listing. Now you're trying to retarget them again. You're not trying to raise awareness about your product. However, sponsored display can also be used to raise awareness towards the top of funnel. So this is where you start to think about budget in terms of strategizing behind top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of funnel, post-purchase funnel. All of these different things come into play. And to really break down your budget in that sense, again, you want to start with the bottom of the funnel, make sure that's super solid, rock strong, and then build out your middle funnel, then build out your top of funnel, and then eventually maybe even go external traffic or DSP and start to branch out from there once all of that stuff is strong foundationally.
Sponsored display ads, for the listeners' benefit, tell us what they look like, because we know the sponsored products and we know the sponsored brand video ads. We know the sponsored brand at the top. It has a big banner. What do the sponsored display ads look like?
Yeah, so a really good way to go, when you go into sponsored display, you go to create an ad, you'll be able to go scroll through a carousel that will show you all the different ad, the views of the different types of ads for sponsored display. It can get very confusing because there are multiple sizes of banners and they show up in different locations throughout Amazon. Generally speaking, most of them are on the product detail page. So you would use them to either protect your own brand or to try to ethically steal sales from your competitor where you have some kind of an advantage. Maybe you have more reviews or maybe your price is better. Where they sit is typically at the top of the product detail page, the very top stripe. I don't think that gets a lot of conversions. The thing is, Amazon doesn't tell us the conversion by the type of sponsored display ad. So we just get it all lumped together into one report. My hunch is that this top strip banner, when you go to Amazon's page, you'll see it. That probably doesn't get a lot of conversion. It's more for just impression share, recognition of your brand, that sort of thing. However, there are ads right below the buy box and right below the bullet points on desktop that really serve more of a purpose of getting and driving sales or driving people away from that current listing onto your listing. And then in the middle of the product detail page, there's a big headline banner. It's probably the biggest ad of all of Amazon. You'll see that that's also sponsored display. And there might be a couple more scattered on the side, little banner ads. In the search results, you'll see sponsored display banner ads mostly on the side. Sometimes it's on the homepage as well, but it's very rare. There's 10 different locations. However, knowing these ads and where they're showing up, that's when you start to get strategic with your budget. Without knowing where they show up, it's like, well, when would I use sponsored display ads? Well, first you have to know where they show up and why you're using them. Am I using this to steal sales from my competitor? Am I using this to protect my own brand, maybe to cross-sell products of my own brand when somebody gets to my listing? Am I using this for top of funnel awareness on a competitor or a different category that's related to my product? All sorts of things that you could do with this. But yeah, knowing those placements is really important for this.
Yeah. And as far as allocating your budget, what would be a good, once this thing is launched and now you are in phase 2 and then you're getting the results, how do you manage your budget in terms of how much money goes where?
Yeah, well, again, it depends on the brand. Everything is dependent. It's not like a set number. Generally speaking, around 70 to 80% of your budget should go towards sponsored product ads. That's what we're seeing across the board. So 70 to 80% there, and then 10% towards sponsored brand / sponsored brand video, and around 10% towards sponsored display. Again, it's somewhere in that ballpark. But if I see that, then I know that there's good budget utilization across multiple ad types. There is often the case, though, what I saw today, 95% of the budget is going towards sponsored product ads. In which case they're likely leaving money off the table or opportunity. They're leaving that off on the table.
So this is for a campaign that is no longer in launch phase, but they are just going steady. So right at the beginning, we said methodology. So what is the methodology in terms of systematizing this? I mean, since you built the software, what was your approach? Does this system look at how long a campaign has been running and therefore adjusts, or how can the users do this if they were to do it themselves manually?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you could do. First, I would understand the numbers, and I would look at things like what is the tacos or the true ACOS of the account. I mean, it's called a lot of different things, ad cots, or it's got a bunch of different names. We also call it ad spend margin impact, but a lot of people just call it tacos. And this is a number that represents advertising spend over total sales, organic and PPC sales. And it basically will tell you what kind of margin you're losing as a result of ad spend. What are you spending? If I spend $10 and I'm getting out 100, my true ACoS is going to be 10% overall. That's a good number. It's a good place to start. But a lot of sellers don't know what that number is. And that could start to get 15 to 20 to 25%. And now what's happening is a lot of the ad spend is eating away at your margins. And that is unsustainable. So what we want to start off with is getting an understanding of the numbers from a top high level. Where do we stand? Like, what is that number? If that number is too low, let's say it's 3% tacos, that could mean that you're leaving opportunity on the table because you're not utilizing all of the budgets and you're not spending. As we know, Amazon is a flywheel. And if we don't feed that flywheel with enough of the ad spend, we could be losing out on opportunity. So there's a sweet spot. And I can tell you, I built a tool 4 years ago called the margins tool. And the true ACoS back then, or the tacos back then, used to be between 6 to 10%. Now it's more like 10 to 15%. So it's getting more expensive to advertise. And that's why it's so important to know these numbers and to utilize that ad spend the best way. So long answer, in terms of methodology, start off with tacos, knowing that number. You could even break that down on an individual SKU by SKU level with one little caveat: sponsored brand ads, there's no attribution. So you can't keep that, you can't include that into your numbers, sponsored brand ads on a SKU by SKU level. Because I like to look at tacos on a SKU by SKU level to see how is each individual SKU impacted by ad spend. What is the ad spend margin impact for that SKU? You may find that some are 25%, some are in the sweet spot at 10%. Some are maybe at 2%. What is that number? Where is their opportunity? Again, this points the ship in the direction of potential opportunity or potential money that we could be saving on wasted ad spend. Foundational stuff right there.
Okay. Yeah, I study these numbers and I always fall back on, okay, let's report this at SKU level because you have to break it down. So, and then you get stuck with the advertising that doesn't report at SKU level, except that they also eat into the budget. So the money goes there as well. So I know the data is not reported. So how do you go about factoring that expenditure into the overall plan?
So one way that you could potentially do it, and this is just one option, is you could have an overall budget for sponsored brand ads, because the sponsored brand ads is not attributed to an individual SKU, but the other ad types are. So you can figure out your tacos on an individual SKU, excluding sponsored brand ad, and then have a budget specifically for sponsored brand ads, and just keep that budget kind of separate, and then potentially add that in just as like a line item as part of your advertising budget. That's how I would recommend doing it. Unfortunately, that's something that's on our wish list from Amazon, is to get attribution on the SKU levels for sponsored brand ads. Then it'd be much more precise. But without that, you could still look at what is the ad spend for these other ad types. How much is this eating away in my margins? What is my true ACoS? What is my tacos? And then go from there.
Yeah. And you are able to track the sales on sponsored brand ads, not just at SKU level, but the sales overall, right? You can see how much you spend and how much you generate.
Correct. Yeah. And you could see all the other things, the ROAS, the new to brand sales, the ACoS, like all the things are there, except you can't attribute those sales to SKUs inside of the campaign because there's multiple SKUs that you're putting up there on the ad. There's 3 SKUs at the top of search ad. So the attribution is very off.
Yeah. So so I guess the best way to track the whole performance is separate out the budget into 2 line items: sponsored brands and non-sponsored brands. And then, on the sponsored brands, you can report the sales and see what kind of return you're getting. And then on the non-sponsored brands, you can then dig into the SKU level. You can see that SKU level as well as overall. That would give you a good idea in terms of how you are performing, right?
Yeah, that's how we have it in the margins tool. Sponsored brand is a separate line item.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't dig into this level of analyzing the advertising performance, but yeah. Okay. So so you mentioned external advertising. So external advertising is a bit of a controversial subject, isn't it? Because if you drive the wrong kind of external traffic, your conversion rates will suffer. And as yet, if you drive the right kind of external advertising, that's a huge benefit. So what is your take on external advertising?
Yeah, I'll give you my 2 cents, although I have to say I don't have that much experience driving external traffic myself. So this is what I'm hearing on podcasts, webinars. This is what I'm hearing internally with Carbon 6. We have a tool called Pixel Me. Generally speaking, driving external traffic, Amazon likes it. They love it. You know, if you're giving them free business or free customers, essentially. So if you can get decent conversion rates, even if it's not as good as what you would get on Amazon, they still reward you handsomely for having, good means for driving external traffic. So I would say it's a good idea, not for everyone though. It's not for, it's just not for everyone. You have to have a budget for it. You have to be ready for it. I would suggest have your foundation in place first for sponsored product ads, and then layer that piece on if you have a budget for it. But overall, I think it's worthwhile and it's worth exploring, because it is another way to drive signals to Amazon to potentially get that rank that you're looking for. And that's what I would do it to improve the rank of certain keywords.
Yeah. One thing that, so when you are running, whether it's the PPC ads on Amazon or organically driving and optimizing, it's always keyword driven. So people come to Amazon.com, search for a keyword, and then bang, your listing comes up. If you've ranked enough or you advertise on it, and then people buy it, that says, okay, this is a good listing. And they leave good reviews, so it gets better and better. So the conversion gets better. And ultimately, you start ranking under those keywords. But when you bring external traffic, go straight to the product page, right? There is no ranking for a keyword. As yet, I'm hearing that you still get ranked. Do you know what impacts that ranking that come from external traffic on specific keywords?
I think, but what from my understanding is Amazon has a way of knowing what people are searching for from external sites. So Google, and if they search for that and then land on your listing through an Amazon advertisement on Google, then that is attribution towards that particular root keyword. So for the tool like Pixelme, what we're doing on that tool is we're identifying those opportunities that you want to rank for on Amazon, but we're utilizing them in the Google ads. And then that sort of gives a signal over to Amazon that, hey, this is of relevance, it's of importance. Plus they're driving traffic to my listing. It helps to get more favorable, what they call ranking signals to Amazon, which is always a good thing. So yes, my understanding that they do pick that up, although I am not the expert on this by any means.
All right. So tell us a little bit about how one can go about establishing some best practices and, for performance optimizations going forward. So after it's launched and it's now running, what is the best way to manage this whole thing?
Yeah, so I would say the most important thing is to have a routine optimization schedule and to know how to optimize. Like I said before, 90% of the clicks are going to lead to wasted ad spend. Although, people may come back and purchase from you in the future, who knows? But you want to try to reduce that as much as possible. Optimize your bids, optimize placements, optimize search terms that are not leading to a sale. We do what's called an ad spend investigation, where we go in there and we look at all of we call the keyword bleeders or the search term bleeders or even the SKU bleeders. These are search term keywords or SKUs that over the period of time that we're investigating has not led to any bit of a sale. And sometimes it's pretty extensive, 70 clicks, 80 clicks, 90 clicks without a sale. Somebody today had an ASIN that was 63 clicks without a sale. It was an easy optimization that they missed. Now, you could just do a negative target on that ASIN, and now you're saving all of that money every single month. Put that towards opportunities that you find in the search term report, or put that towards different ad types for the keywords that are converting well. So this is a routine thing that, there's no longer a set and forget type of strategy. Things are constantly changing. There's a million things that goes into conversion rate. Your conversion rate's constantly going up and down. Bids are constantly going up and down. So you have to have some kind of manageable system to make sure your bids are optimized to your target, to make sure you're reducing that wasted ad spend through negating, and then looking into more of the sort of the deeper bid optimizations, like placement optimization. That sort of thing is often overlooked by sellers. Like, where am I performing best in terms of this keyword's place for the placement? Optimizing that is important. All sorts of things that goes into it. But generally speaking, a good routine optimization strategy is fundamental. And then analyzing your budget, there's a lot that goes into that as well.
So what I'm hearing is really this wasted ad spend is really the main motivator, so to speak. So you're keeping an eye on it, and wherever that waste is occurring, that's where you optimize. And that way you are eliminating the negatives, so to speak, and increasing the positives, and therefore the return.
Yeah, and then you get into your budget and you try to amplify what's working really well and increase your budget or uncap your budget. Amazon has a tool that you could easily look at where it shows you campaigns that have gone out of budget, and they show you the estimated missed clicks, sales, and impressions from going out of budget. And in theory, if you have a campaign that's performing really well, you want to make sure you don't go out of budget for those campaigns. So you can look at that tool and you can raise your budget. Amazon also has what's called budget rules. So for example, if you look based on performance-based budget rules, and you set a rule which looks at the last 7 days of performance, and you say, Amazon, if my budget is if my ACoS is less than 25%, increase my budget by 10%, and look at it every day or look at it twice a week or whatever you want it to do. The point is you're maximizing the performance and the budget for the campaigns that have good performance. And then you're going in for the wasted ad spend. You're reducing that and minimizing that as much as possible. It's a combination of the two.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this conversation can go on forever, right? I mean, there's so many different.
We got a bunch of things. Yeah, there's a bunch of things to talk about with budget. It's a very detailed topic because then you get into inventory as well. Like, I'll give you one, tip. If you are running out of inventory and you're going to be out of inventory, shut your budget off. Like, turn the budget, because you're just wasting money on spend. Unless you're going to be right back in stock, like maybe a couple of days later. But I've seen it where people go out of stock for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, a couple of months, and they continuously just pump the gas on their ad spend, wasting a ton of money. And ultimately they're just, it's just going to lead to less profit, overall, because they're going to be out of stock for a longer period of time. So little things like that kind of irk me a little bit, but that is budget management as well. It ties into inventory. It ties into seasonality. It ties into a lot of different factors in your business. So it also ties into events as well. Maybe you want to budget for Prime Day or for the season, holiday season, like all of these little facets of budget, and not to overwhelm people, but just to start to get them to think about how can they better utilize their budget on a regular basis, because there's probably room for some optimization.
Yeah, I mean, we are now recording this in May, and Mother's Day is coming up, and then there's Father's Day. So obviously these are events that influence behavior. So the spending goes up. So people want to get the most out of it. But inventory is a big deal. I just want to clarify something. If you're running low on inventory, shut the budget down. When you say shut, you're not talking about turning off the campaign. You're talking about reducing the budget, right?
Well, it really depends. And I should be clear. If you're going to be out of stock for just a couple of days, then you may want to keep that budget on full, full throttle. Just go out all guns a-blazing, as fast as you can, highest velocity possible. But if you're going to be out for several months and it's inevitable and you have some kind of inventory issue, you're likely just wasting money on ad spend that you don't need to spend. And you'd probably just get the organic sales anyways and just go from there. These are the situations that I'm talking about, where you're going to be out for an extended period of time and you're just spending money that you typically don't need to, that you wouldn't need to spend.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more I want to talk about, but that will have to be another time. So
Awesome.
it's a great conversation. So now I wanna hear the story about how a physical therapist goes into software development. So tell us that. What was the reason? What happened? What fell on your head and said, no, you're not going to be in physical therapy?
Well, when you're 17, 18, you have to pick a major. I couldn't pick any, I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life. And they're like, pick a major. And I said, okay, well, let me take a test. I took a test. They told me I was going to be in the church or a priest. I'm like, I can't see myself as a priest. I am the complete opposite. So I said, you know what, let me do physical therapy because at least I'm on my feet all day and I don't have to be behind a cubicle or something that was always my worst nightmare. So I took up physical therapy and I got into class. Everyone was passionate about it. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what the hell are these people? I could care less about physical therapy. This is not my passion at all. But, you're 20 years old and you go through it. I kid you not, my hair was falling out. As you can see here, I have a full head of hair. I remember going in here and be like, I am freaking stressed. I do not like physical therapy at all. But here I am, growing up, have to pick something. So I chose physical therapy, got through it by the skin of my teeth, passed the board exams on the second try. I failed it the first time. And then I go through 10 years of physical therapy only to realize that what I really loved about what I was doing in physical therapy was growing a business. I had branched off. I started doing home care for seniors who took Medicare. I started building a team in the Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens and Nassau and Suffolk, a couple clients in New York, but really more in like the island. And I was like, oh, this is a lot of fun. I'm learning about marketing. I'm learning about advertising. I'm building a team, leadership. And slowly but surely that got into personal development. And I started meditating. I started getting serious about morning routines and all the things that they teach you in all of these books. I got a coach, and my coach goes to me. He goes, Zagare. He goes, you have a lot of juice, but you're spinning your plates in physical therapy. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, it's not the right vehicle for you. And I'm like, okay, you mean I'm allowed to choose something else? He goes, yeah. And I go, well, what is it? He goes, I don't know, but I see you in importing and exporting. I'm like, what do you mean importing and exporting? Okay. No, 2 days later, I kid you not, there was a thunderstorm going on in the morning and I couldn't get to my car to go to the gym until it stopped. It was like a severe thunderstorm. And I'm on my phone scrolling and I see an advertisement for eBay and Amazon. And I'm like, oh, what is eBay and Amazon? I skipped the gym that day and I start reading about eBay and Amazon, importing and exporting products. I started to import my own products, started my own third-party brand. And then I started realizing, hey, this is a major opportunity. Within a couple of months, we were doing, 30 or 50,000 a month or so, hit it a home run because of advertising. And at the time, there was no advertising tool out there. So I decided that it was time to build our own, having no idea how to build a tool at all whatsoever. And this is not a sob story, but it turns out our first developer was a real, I didn't know anything. He was a real crook in a way. And, all the problems you have with a business and the obstacles happened with PPC Entourage, but I had the passion for it. That was missing in physical therapy, completely missing. So that for the first time is when I woke up every day and I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm excited about this. This is fun. This is not seeming like a job, although there were tons of obstacles and there still are. But, it was definitely different than the business and physical therapy.
So when was the first time growing up as a kid that you realized this kind of stuff, but building businesses and more being a business-oriented person. When was the first time? Remember?
I think there's no dramatic story for me. It was more like shoveling snow and raking leaves and all that really hard work, and also the opportunity of like buying baseball cards and selling them higher. I actually went through this really awkward phase growing up where I bought Beanie Babies. I think I was like ninth grade, and I remember waking up before school, like when the florist would open, riding my bike to go sit online for like a princess Beanie Baby so that I could potentially sell it for more money. Like all of these ideas were in my head back then. And it was always about, leveraging my time to make more money and not having to like sit behind somewhere I didn't want to be for an extended period of time, more geared towards freedom for me. And then I actually started doing, I think a lot of entrepreneurs have some like, bad history in the background, and mine was very brief, but I started scalping tickets on eBay. So I'd buy them on Ticketmaster, and I'd buy them for $100 and I'd sell them for $500, $600, $800 on eBay back when it was still something you could do. I don't even know if you could do that anymore. But I kid you not, that was before college, and that was in the 90s. And had I stuck with e-commerce back then, I'd be one of the OGs of the OGs, in the space. But then college got in the way, and physical therapy and everything else. So yeah, and my grandfather was an entrepreneur as well. I think I got a lot from him.
So, I mean, there is a difference though, because to you, you know how it is. When you are good at something or you do something every day, it comes naturally to you. You don't realize that it's actually a big challenge or not even on the radar screen of other people. So in your case, you mentioned that, it's nothing dramatic that I started, but why? Because not every single kid thinks about that kind of stuff. They do other things. They play with their toys and friends or whatever. So what was it that got you thinking, okay, I should shovel snow, make money, trade baseball cards or whatever? Do you remember what was the reason to get you into that?
I often think about that, and I think about the time when I like to be different. And I think this was an example of that. I had this time where I had a choice to buy 2 albums at the CD store where I was with my friends. And one, they were going to make fun of me for buying. And the other one, they would say, oh, nothing of it. And it would just be part of the conversation and fit right in. I chose to buy the 1972 Jethro Tull album called Thick as a Brick in front of my friends when I was 13 years old. And I think of that as like, yeah, I was different, like my friends were listening to whatever, and that's cool, do what they want to do. But like, I remember having like a different brain back then and choosing something that wasn't part of the norm. And I think I sort of used that pattern throughout my my whole childhood, I suppose. And I'm sure there's other examples that I can't think of, but yeah, I would say I wasn't afraid to be different. And even back then, I knew I was different in a way. And I was okay with that. I was like, okay, this is just who I am.
And why do you think you wanted to be different?
Oh, I don't know. That's a really good question. I would say that I was really given a lot of encouragement growing up. I was good at sports. I was good at school. I was relatively, liked by the women, and growing up, like all the things that gave me a lot of good encouragement. So I was afraid to take risks. I remember the biggest risk I took was in 5th grade. I was always into sports. And then one day I saw a Broadway show for the first time. And my mother was, she said, hey, would you like to try out for this show and, sing and dance? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So I spent like 3 or 4 weeks studying singing and dancing. And not only did I get the part, I ended up winning an award. So like back then when I was younger, I think I had no fears, no hesitation of worrying about what other people would think. And I had a lot of encouragement growing up in my family. And I think I was able to take that and be okay with failing, okay with trying new things, okay with being bad at something, but then working towards getting better and better and better at it, which was something same thing with swimming. I took up swimming, and I remember my first race, I got 2nd place. So like I was motivated to try stuff new, not afraid to try stuff new, and different in my own way.
Yeah, this is interesting. I think, what I'm hearing from you, yeah, of course, that wanting to be different is what's got stuck in your mind. But I think very early you were conditioned to be a risk taker. And of course, risks, when you're taking a risk in something, it's always the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
So an unknown is always different than what everybody else is used to. So it's interesting how things kind of evolve, but in their core, it's the same thing.
Oh yeah, risk taking, the unknown, and all of that. I remember the hardest conversation I had with my father was when I was like 27 or 28, and I told him, "Hey, I'm not doing physical therapy anymore." And maybe this was later. Maybe I was around 30. But when I told him that, the fear of, oh my gosh, like the comfort of having a physical, I don't even have a license anymore, but the comfort of having that license and having that job, like to him, he's not as high of a risk taker as I am. So it was like I am a major risk taker, like probably more than I should be. And I have friends who are so conservative and they are so happy with what they're doing and they enjoy the protection of a job and we're completely different, but we're still compatible and friends, but we are different in every way, shape, and form.
Listen, a man decided one day that there must be a place on the outside on the other side of this ocean, and I have no idea if there is or not, but I'm gonna go look for it, and the rest is history. And that's why we are living on that exact very land, right? So without risk taking, this country wouldn't exist. I mean, I'm sure it would kind of somehow come to existence, but America is all about taking risks and exploring the unknown. So you are pursuing exactly the same path.
And one more thing on risk taking. When I was younger, 21, 22, I actually got into trouble with gambling, risking and gambling. And I actually had to go to Gamblers Anonymous, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise because I ended up learning about spirituality and all the things through what I learned there. But what I also learned was that, yes, I'm a risk taker, and the best risk that I can take is on myself, not other things that I can't control. I could put all that energy into entrepreneurship and still take risks. That's part of my nature, but I'm betting on the success of myself and my company and my team, as opposed to betting on black or red. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is why I heard somebody, I don't remember now who that was, but they asked this guy, "Do you invest in the stock market?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Why?" "Well, I invest in the only company that I have a little bit of control over, because business is already hard, and that's my own company. So why should I put my faith?" I mean, of course, there are many reasons to invest in the stock market, but I mean, the best investment you can make is the investment into your personal growth, because that comes back and pays off in many ways. That was a great conversation, Mike. This is an interesting transition story and also methodology standpoint. So obviously, there is a lot that goes into managing PPC, and that's what you developed the platform for. So anybody who wants to obviously give it a shot. So tell us, how can people reach you, and how can, if you like, kick the tires off your platform, and share with us your contact information?
Yeah, so head on over to ppcentourage.com. And if you're doing more than 5,000 in ad spend, we'll do a free ad spend investigation. And I will also I'll be on that call, like talking about the ad spend investigation myself. So we'll go over, spend some time together. You can also email me, mike@ppcentourage.com or mike@carbon6.io, but either one is fine. And be on the lookout, because we're going to be coming out with some really awesome stuff soon. I am beyond excited. This is the next chapter for us. The collaboration with Carbon 6 is going to be next level. So excited about that, and hope to see you all out there.
Great. Before we wrap up, don't forget to visit www.getida.com/legends to learn more and sign up to claim money for your lost or damaged inventory with Amazon. Your first $400 in reimbursements will be free. www.getida.com/legends, and that's www.getida.com/legends. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for being here.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And this brings us to the end of another episode. I'll see you on the next one.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the episode, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too.